I'm Jim Check. You're watching Kelowna Now. Here it is the day after, the big day after. And I have with me Stephen Johnston, the candidate, MLA candidate for the BC United Party in West Kelowna.
Yeah.
Big news yesterday, right? Big news, right?
Yeah, it was a big day. Wasn't something I woke up thinking that we'd be dealing with, or it was really something as candidates and even MLAs we were blindsided with.
Yeah, it just kind of like, I guess in their defense, that they couldn't make this deal in the public realm or even in everybody's realm, just kind of like the top, I guess the party leaders and stuff like that would be kind of trying to, because I'm sure even at the 11th hour, it was a maybe go or no go kind of thing.
Oh, and I totally respect the need for sort of the secrecy, and it's a big decision, and I'm not complaining about that. I'm just saying that the blindsided nature certainly affects us all as candidates. Like it's hard to grapple with that in the moment. Even now, still, like I've had a night to process and think, but you're still processing, and there's a lot of questions and no answers as of yet. So.
I always kind of like take things back to a hockey or like a sports tryout. You've tried out, you've made the team, and then they're saying, wait a second, that's not the team. We're going to do a combined team. That's like saying Kelowna and Vernon are going to field a AAA team, and they're going to take those two teams and make one team. So now everybody already made their tryouts, already made their commitments, and already, like family, all kinds of stuff, right? You've already made all those commitments, and you've put yourself out there, right, to people, the electorate as well. And you've gone through the stress of being nominated and accepting that nomination. Now you're kind of doing it again in a less transparent kind of, I guess, process than the first one.
Yeah, well, less transparent in the sense that we don't know what's going on right now.
You don't even know how the pick is happening, kind of, right? Like, that Kevin and John are likely sitting down with, a group of people and figuring out who's who.
Yeah, the press conference yesterday seemed to suggest that there would be a coming together in whatever fashion that is of candidates from both sides. And but again, when the media were asking questions in that press conference, there was no direct answers given. Like when yes, no questions, which is pretty typical, I think, in politics.
I don't think anybody was expecting. And I think you and I just talked prior to going on camera here, is that how do they do it? Because if they just name one person at a time, that's probably going to cause even more discontentment for the ones that aren't getting named, right? And more anxiety. And that I would think that the more proper way to do it is just that here's the slate, and then again, I go back to the hockey days, when you make those calls to those kids, you want to do that in one day, right? Whether they're on the team or off the team, and instead of like, prolonging the agony, right? And as tough as that is for everybody, right?
And I hope there is an intent to make this an expedited process, because even for conservative candidates, I'm sure they're sitting there just like we are, saying, well, what's going on? Right. And I would doubt that they have any.
Well, the good side of it is I think everybody knows who everybody is, right? So I think I think Kevin's role at this point would be to try and, really kind of advocate for his candidates, right? To get them on the slate there. A tough thing for him yesterday, right? And then I guess his message was, I'm doing the right thing for BC. And then it's a tough thing for him to take the knee, but I think, he probably looked at the polls and said the only way, that's what he said, is that the only way for the BC United and BC Conservatives to make a challenge for the government is to actually combine.
Yeah, and like all along, that's sort of been my heart behind this election, is that we find a way as the United Party and the Conservative Party to come together. This is about as messy of a way as I could think.
Sooner would have been better.
And I have no doubt that, like, when I'm at the doors, Jim, the number one concern is vote split. For whatever reason, Kevin wasn't resonating with people, at least in my riding. And so that was a huge leadership decision that Kevin made yesterday. It was made unilaterally. As I said earlier, we weren't a part of that decision. And so it's tough now. We're all picking up the pieces. It's a bit messy. But I do respect that it had to happen in confidence. I respect that it's a big decision. And I don't doubt that the province will be better off for it in the long run. And hopefully the merger can bring several of our good candidates into the mix, because we have really good people, Jim.
I know, I agree with that. And there is, for me, just looking from the outside, from all the interviews I've done and that, it seems like, like in the beginning, John Rustad was painted by some of the political parties as a far right extremist. Even some of the NDP MLAs have said. But it seems like he's been coming more to the center. And I think if you want to win British Columbia, you have to come to the center. Do you know what I mean? You have to find a center ground, Eleanor Sturco, stuff like that. You know what I mean? You have to find a way to appeal to the center as well as, the extremes on either side. I say extremes, but, like obviously you have your core, and, the NDP has their core, and then, the Conservatives would have their core on the other spectrum. And obviously the BC United Party was kind of that party in the middle. So I would think that the strong candidates from BC United would fill that middle very well.
I think so too. And I think it kind of produces a potential result where there's a straighter path forward as far as progress goes. And I think, BC is ready for a big tent right of center coalition. And really, if we can merge good candidates from both parties together, I think you have that big tent right there.
Well, I would say, like I said, to win British Columbia or any place is that you have to kind of really satisfy the middle, right? And whether that's in the federal, provincial, or what have you, right? Yeah. And I think the typical family values fit into that centerpiece, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
And I guess the stressful parts is, there'll be candidates, if they don't get chosen, will have a choice to run as an independent, I guess, too, right?
Yeah, I heard, I wasn't on the radio or listening to the radio when it happened, but I heard that Mike Bernier said this morning that it's likely that BC United candidates who have been withdrawn from the party will automatically show up as an independent. Now, I've made a call to Elections BC to clarify that, but I haven't had a call back yet. So I'm not really sure what I am right now. I know I'm not a candidate anymore in the BC United.
Right.
Potentially I'm an independent right now. I have no idea. So
if the current MLAs that are sitting decide or to become candidates for do they become the official opposition till the election as well? Or is it, I guess it's not very long anyway. It doesn't really matter.
I mean, till the writ drops on September 21st. So there's everyone who's an MLA right now is still an MLA for the BC United Party, right, as far as I'm aware, in their ridings currently.
So I guess, that being said, and you'll find out if you're in or you're out or whatever, what are the issues that are most important to British Columbians?
Oh, I mean, I think affordability, I think public health and safety, healthcare, and access to healthcare, the drug epidemic and crisis that we have. I think employment too. I think we have a weak economy right now. I think access to our natural resources, to good paying jobs that support families. I think there's really no one issue these days, Jim. There's so many.
Yeah. So we've had Kevin and John on quite a few times actually, and we've tried to ask for the differences in the two parties. I think there's more similarities than there is differences. So I think that's probably going to play into this combination, because there's a lot more similarities to the party than there are differences. Yes, there are some differences, right? But, I guess there's a good saying out there that says, let's look at what binds us together as opposed to what divides us, right? So,
yeah, I agree.
And multiple voices. I mean, the one thing that I've heard John say, which is unusual, is that he's going to let's see if we can hold him to it. He's going to let his MLAs speak, right? Yeah. He's going to encourage them to have their voice for their first. He said that the MLAs have their voice for their community first before they have a voice for the party.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's true, that's unusual.
That's great. Like Kevin actually had the same principle. We had a town hall here at the Coast Capri a few weeks back, and he said the exact same thing.
Exactly. So that there are more similarities, like their forestry program that he just laid out. Yeah. So, I mean, I've had lots of discussions with John Rustad on that. Seems very similar. The health one that came out.
Yeah. Bill of Rights.
Rustad, Kevin said that John copied him. So, I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, that's a form of flattery, but it's also, there's a lot more similarities into what the two parties had going than there probably was differences.
Well, and the Conservatives haven't put out a ton of policy yet, but I think it's, well within reason to expect that the policies will line up very closely as we come closer to the election. And now there's a chance to bring, I think, some good policy that we've put out and merge that into their party.
Yeah. And I think the one that, that's going to be, they're going to try and work is obviously, the climate one. And obviously the climate affects us here in the Okanagan with wildfires. And, and I mean, I've spoke to John on that too, and obviously recognized that wildfires are a big part of our problem here, right? And we need to do a lot more in mitigation, right?
Way more. I mean, forest management practices like, access to harvesting timber and like making our natural resources work for us again. If you don't harvest, like our old growth forests, they start decaying around that 80 to 110 year mark. Yeah. If you're not harvesting them, they're blowing over or burning, and they're fuel load.
And they can't even get permits. And I've talked to the jobs minister and the forest minister, and they admit that there is issues with getting permits out, even for pine beetle kill and for burnt wood.
Yeah.
So, but that puts British Columbian lives at risk and homes at risk, right?
Well, and when you're allowing fires to burn like we do, the greenhouse gas emissions from
the biggest carbon emitter, right? And 94% of the forests are owned by the BC government.
Yeah.
So they have the biggest responsibility, right?
And let's talk about Crown land too, like access to, like we have a housing supply shortage, a land shortage, and 94% of our province is Crown land. Yeah. How do we open some of that up? That's a big conversation in the next term too.
And an interesting one, I interviewed Sonia First-to-Know for the BC Green Party, and she wants the carbon tax scrapped at the way it is and reformed and put the carbon tax back at the wellhead as opposed to into the people's pocketbooks. So that's an interesting take. So the only person that I think is advocating for the carbon tax in the current structure would be the NDP. Because I think Kevin came out against any raises and stuff like that, and would change it if the Pierre Poilievre gets in, they would scrap it as well. And John said he'd scrap it. But like even Sonia come out and saying it's not working for the average British Columbian, right? It's actually coming out of their pocket and it's hurting people, right? So I even did some stuff on AI and asked how much there is being generated and all that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting thing. It seems like they've used that tax and it's ended up in general coffers in a little bit too, right? So
it has. It's gone right to general revenue, which is not being used.
And then used wherever, right? And for projects and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's lots to fix, and I don't want to keep you too long today because there's not a lot that you can offer. But is your heart still in it? I guess is the big question.
Oh, absolutely. My heart's been the whole time. I'm very committed to my riding, to my community. That's home for me. We're staring at West Kelowna right across the bridge here. Like that is my home. The West Side's where I've been.
And you're a serving city councillor.
I'm on city
second term city councillor, right?
Second term city councillor. Committed to that role too. You run with that right till the election. Yeah. After the results come in, you figure out what you're going to do, which is likely step down. In BC, you can be
you can do both?
You can do both. I don't recommend it, but you can.
It's obvious that you care about the community, right?
I do care about the community. And, a lot of people don't know this, but probably 3 weeks ago, I got a text during the middle of the day that I didn't notice. And at night I checked, and John Rustad had actually texted me and said, hey, we should hop on a call. And he had said, we've got this potential ride or a seat opening up. He didn't say where in the Okanagan, and we'd like you to take it. And I said, I don't want a response, just think about it. And then we met for coffee a few days after that. And I said, hey, I'm really flattered that you've thought of me for this seat, the one that had come open in Kelowna Mission. But I'm committed to my team. We have great people, especially in Team Okanagan here, like exceptional candidates.
I think BC United is strong in the Okanagan for sure.
And I'm also committed to my community. So I did reject that offer. But I said, John, I hope I have respect for you. I have respect for the party. I don't engage in the dirty games or get in the weeds or the drama of politics. And I said, I suspect we'll both be elected. And if we are, I hope I'm going to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And he said, I absolutely know that. That's why I'm talking to you now. So, I've been able to maintain dialogue with John sort of in unexpected ways. And I hope that there's an opportunity to work with them.
Well, again, Kevin Falcon did say, and it must have been a tough decision for Kevin, like a really tough decision for him, that he's doing the right thing for British Columbia. So let's hope that his efforts aren't in vain, and that the people that are going to be affected can see that as well. And all I can say is I wish everyone well, and that there's good outcomes, and that everybody cares about a better British Columbia.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't keep you anymore. And as soon as you find out, let's be the first to know.
Okay, we'll let you know. Thanks, Jim.
All right, and thank you for watching Kelowna Now.